Hi guys, my name is Catherine Pabon. I am your host on Z-Files Podcast, where we bring your curiosity to our conversation. Today's segment, Behind the Ballot, we have a special guest, Alex Marek. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, what you're running for and everything?
Sure. My name's Alex Marek. Live in Monroe County here and running for judge or the Court of Common Pleas. Just distinguish that from the magistrate's race because there's so many signs for different judges and it's a little confusing, but running for the Court of Common Pleas, there's 5 candidates to choose from and I am one of them.
Okay, thank you. So you've had many roles in your career history. You served as a law enforcement and then also with air marshal and then prosecutor. That's a lot. Would you like to talk about that a little bit, your service in public safety?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have that kind of different types of experience, and it's pretty much come along as my law enforcement career has progressed. Because I started as a municipal police officer way back in 1999 working for a small municipality, and while I was working there, I had a mentor who was one of the detectives who was also going to law school and had graduated to law school while we were working together as officers. He pretty much took me under his wing there, and not only did he help me with police work and detective work and getting my feet wet in criminal investigations, but also knew that I was motivated to pursue not only my education, but to better myself, career-wise as well. And I was working on my master's degree in criminal justice administration while I was working as a police officer. Just certain things happened where I ended up going into the military, into the U.S. Army, and serving right after, shortly after 9/11 happened. And so I kind of took a break from my master's degree. But when I returned from serving in the Army and back to Michigan, where I'm originally from, that I finished my master's degree and had to make a decision. Do I want to continue my education and pursue a PhD in criminology or something of that nature? And this detective, who had now been in law practice for several years, just kind of said, "No, you're going to law school." I took his advice and ended up in law school, and 2.5 years later, graduating and starting my legal practice.
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's very accomplishing. Your friend, is he someone you still draw inspiration from? Is he someone that you still have in your life that's supporting you?
Yes, he is just an attorney now in Michigan. He is part of an organization that provides legal representation for police officers, specifically when they get involved in officer-involved shootings and fatal incidences while they're conducting in the performance of their duties. I've recently been involved in 2 of those cases here in Pennsylvania because, by association, they know I practice here now in Pennsylvania. I'm no longer doing prosecutorial work, so I can assist the officers protect their rights as they go through these officer-involved investigations.
Right.
And I've recently had one in Lehigh County and one in Bucks County. And obviously, thankfully, the officers are safe and everything was good. And
so the cases were good.
Yeah, in both instances, the DAs had determined it was appropriate, the action that they took.
Thank you. So having a strong background with law enforcement and military, how does that shape your views with justice, fairness, and now going into a judicial role?
Well, I think it really helps out where I have a distinct sense of fairness, and plus the analytical side of it as well, where you don't take the information for granted or just on its face. You kind of really have to process it to make appropriate decisions in my analyzation and interpretation of the laws. And I think that's really where I set myself apart from the other candidates in this race, is my ability to do that. I'm very thankful for the firm I'm at with right now. They really recruited me to the extent that they really wanted my ability to do that type of work for them, because it makes not only the practice a little bit easier when you get the appropriate interpretation of the law and be able to apply it to the facts of the cases that we have. It makes our arguments solid, and plus it's hard to say on the other side work against if we're right. And of course that's, we want to try and come up with the same interpretation that we believe the judges are going to, and hopefully we all do. We should do that, but it doesn't happen. But I think I've had more of a favorable aspect of being able to achieve that goal.
Okay. So working on both sides of the courtroom, as a prosecutor, later as a civil litigation and municipality law, how does that broad legal background prepare you for the bench, for the Court of Common Pleas? How does that directly have relevance?
In this particular instance, it has a lot of relevance in that the broad variety of experience and knowledge of all those practice areas, it's all going to intertwine as a judge, because you have to be able to hopefully readily make some sort of decisions, or at least have a fairly good working knowledge of all these areas, because all these different cases are just going to come hit you all at the same time, and you don't have an insurmountable amount of time to try and do all the research necessary to try and catch up. And that's where I think, again, that I have a good leg up, that the vast variety of experience of the different legal areas that I already can have that foundational base to go off of.
Right. So, holding leadership roles, including chief of appellate.
Doing appellate work is very kind of, again, it's a unique niche of practice where you have to pretty much love being able to do the research and writing aspect of the job. And that is another very important aspect of being a judge, because you're going to have, and this is from knowledge of being a law clerk at the courts here as well, is you got to be able to do that legal research and take the cases that, like the defendant side is bringing you, and you got to take the cases that the plaintiff sides or the prosecution's bringing you, and see whose cases, have that weight, that to try and figure out the proper analysis for it. And again, having the experience doing the appellate work and doing the legal research aspect of it is where I'm really kind of like the nerd of the group, that I enjoy doing that work.
How would you say that would that kind of collaboration will work now, like if you went for judge?
If I went, again, it kind of gives me a leg up in to be able to perform the duties, because that is really what I do already, is digging into the law and taking a lot of the information in the briefs and the filings of right now my opponents, or the opposing counsel, and trying to make my argument, or you'd say I really don't try and make an argument as much as I try to make the actual case of what I believe the judge is going to pretty much mirror what I'm putting on paper. That is always my goal when I'm writing a brief, because I want my interpretation not only to be the correct one based upon the analysis of the law, but I want it to have the judge just go, yes, that's correct, and that's what I'm following. And if I do that, then I'm actually doing my job correctly.
Right. So following like logistics and not just like how you feel towards something.
Correct. Yeah, you got to put any bias that you have. So it doesn't matter which religion you follow, what kind of political views you have. You got to put all those things aside when you're making decisions and applying the law. None of that is taken into account when making these decisions.
Right.
You take everything that has, especially with the Court of Common Pleas, that the higher courts, like the Superior Court and the Commonwealth Court and the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, you take all those opinions that they've given you as precedent, and you go, okay, even if I don't like it, this is what the higher court says, and that's what I have to follow.
It just is what it is, yeah.
To an extent, you can always opine and give your opinion, say,
right.
Although I'm not certain that this really is the correct result for the basis of what the law says, but this is the result as the law states, as the law is now. And then, it goes from there. And it's okay to not have the exact agreement of how a law is applied, but as long as you apply it as the law is given, again, from the higher courts or as the statute reads. You don't try and find the gray area in the statute. You go, okay, this is what the statute reads, this is how it's going to apply, right out, without trying to find out if I can pigeonhole something into it. It doesn't work that way.
And then with bias, like speaking of bias, how would you respond to people who know your career trajectory and like your history and might have a view that you might be a tough on crime perspective for the bench?
Well, I hope I'm always tough but fair, and I kind of take it the same approach as a parent.
So there's tough, but there's fairness with it. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I can I really give that example of where as an ADA, I had just completed a preliminary hearing for a defendant who was was charged with a felony drug trafficking. A state trooper had pulled him over. He was acting all kind of squirrely and nervous. In the course of the traffic stop, the trooper determined that there's probably narcotics in the vehicle, got consent to search the vehicle, and found what appeared to be a kilogram of narcotics.
So he consented?
He consented, yeah. And
he found it?
And the trooper found it.
Oh, wow.
And I had just completed the preliminary hearing at the magisterial level because the suspect did not want to make a deal for a potential lighter sentence down the road, which is what my typical practice was as an ADA, is give you consideration for a lighter sentence, or something down the road when we get to the actual, say, the meat and potatoes of the case, because it's pretty the preliminary hearing is really the first step. And he didn't want to do any of that, so we went through the entire hearing, and I had just got it bound over to the Court of Common Pleas. About an hour later, the trooper calls me and said, "Hey, it field tested positive, but the lab just came back with the results and said it's fake."
The narcotics?
Yes, it was fake narcotics.
Okay.
So
what was the reason? Is there context behind that? I don't understand.
I don't know what the exact story is because generally when something comes out as not being like genuine, it's a counterfeit substance.
Does the case get thrown, or?
In this case, I did dismiss it.
Okay.
I worked very diligently because this was an out-of-state defendant, so he was a flight risk.
Okay.
The magistrate judge continued his bond, which is pretty significant because the bond is to ensure the suspect or defendant shows up for court, and if he's out of state, and especially with a potential lengthy sentence for a traffic offense, probably wouldn't come back on his own.
Yeah.
So the bond was fairly high, and I spent the next 2 to 3 hours of that afternoon getting that guy out of jail, because and this was on a Friday.
Just to clarify, it was a Friday.
It was it's important
Yeah, of
because
course, yeah.
I could have sat on that until Monday.
Yeah.
And he could have sat in the jail all weekend.
Yeah.
And with my knowing that he, the charge wasn't appropriate because of it being counterfeit.
Yeah.
That, I could have left him in jail. But.
So when you say counterfeit, like what exactly would the narcotics have been? Like,
I don't know the full backstory. My impression is that in this particular case, this was a guy who is traveling from Texas, drove up to New York to pick up narcotics. Oh. And my belief is that whoever was in New York
gave him
counterfeit. So whoever he was dealing with in New York got a lot of money and gave him counterfeit drugs. So they cheated him.
But did he, I guess, testify that his intent was to traffic drugs?
No, he didn't take it. He didn't take the stand at all.
Okay.
And in this particular case, it wasn't a case where that defendant was actually making them for sale to somebody. This is, when narcotics of that quantity are found in like a traffic stop, like in this case, it's assumed to be trafficking because of the quantity.
Yeah.
In this, because it's not just a small amount that people use for personal use or anything of that nature. It's assumed to be trafficking. Mm-hmm. But with them not actually offering for sale or trying to sell to an informant or undercover or anything like that, or wasn't observed trying to traffic the narcotics, I could have really charged him with possession of a counterfeit substance, which is still a misdemeanor to an extent, but being somebody out of state for a misdemeanor who had no previous record really wouldn't have done the justice system any good, because he would have gotten probation at the most. He would have still had to sit in jail because he's an out-of-state guy. And again, weighing those factors of justice and fairness in that particular case, just weighed, it was in factor just getting rid of the case.
So in that scenario, do you follow up with the original dealer in New York, or it's just not
that's out of our jurisdiction. This was I was a county prosecutor, and the particular defendant had no interest in cooperating whatsoever, which is very typical, especially if he's just what we call a mule, somebody who's just transferring a fairly good quantity from one location to another. That he's probably going to be more trouble with his own organization or whoever he was muling for being duped with the counterfeit substance than anything else.
Oh, that's a really interesting case. I just want to ask more questions about it, but I won't dwell.
Sure.
Well, in 2024, you and several other prosecutors were let go during a political shift in Northampton DA's office. How did that experience shape your views on a nonpartisan justice and political independence within the legal system now?
I don't think it shifted my view in any regard. I mean, I was clearly disappointed.
Yeah, of
because
course.
One, I enjoyed what I did. I really, I felt like I was pretty
interesting.
Well, part of it too is when you go from law enforcement and into prosecution, it's really a natural transition.
Yeah. Still dealing with law.
Correct. Yeah, and especially in that aspect. But I really enjoyed the prosecution side of it too, because I got to work with detectives, and I got to still do investigative work, which was a big part of my life for such a long time.
Would you say that's like your favorite part of it?
The investigations, yes.
Yeah. And then now it's just research and everything.
I got to take what I can get. But it's that again, it hasn't affected my view in anything of that nature, where I have any I guess.
Disdain.
Yeah. It's like it's frustrating because I really don't understand it, because with that particular individual that took over that office, I had absolutely no issues with whatsoever. Everything, my interactions with him previously were cordial and professional, but that's also just part of, I guess, the shape of the offices, and when somebody else takes over, they want to really get more of their own personnel,
like cleaning up house.
Yeah, and part of it too, might understand, because I was chief of the appellate unit, and they might have different opinions of how to proceed with cases than I was already kind of direction I was going, so they just take them over.
And then just to go on to that, what is your true take on politics within judicial roles? Because it's supposed to be pretty neutral, supposed to have non-bias. What is your take on it?
I think the only thing I could really address that is by saying, judicial role should be nonpartisan altogether.
Exactly.
Again, you got to set all those preconceptions and beliefs aside, and you can have all the personal beliefs you want, and that you exhibit and I guess profess outside of the courtroom to a certain extent, but none of that has a place inside the courtroom. And as long as you keep those two things completely separate between the decision making and the way you want to, I guess, kind of live your life, to, with your personal beliefs and standards and morals, and that as long as you keep those things completely separate, that's the way it should be.
Good answer. So you practice property law. Do you think that makes you a little bit qualified for the common pleas with the zoning and everything?
To an extent, again, not going to be very humble about it. At least not sounding.
No, go ahead. This is you. This is your interview. No one else is here.
Yeah. No. I like to say that with my experience with dealing with the zoning, the municipal, and the property law.
This is your chance.
This is all the stuff that I already do right now on a regular basis, and I know Judge Zulik is the one that generally handles a lot of that type of, and he has handled that for a long time, and it's going to be a big loss to the court with his knowledge and experience that he has. He needs somebody to replace that as much as possible. And I'm not a complete plug-and-play type of person for that role, because obviously I can't match that. And no one can.
It comes with years of experience.
Correct, but I think I'd have a little bit of a leg up, or to having had that experience already on a regular basis.
What are some examples that you could tell the audience? So most people, they focus on presidential elections or more federal, national elections. So local elections is already hard to get people out to the polls. Nonetheless, judicial elections. So just to explain it in simpler terms, what it looks like.
In regards to
your work with property law. And how it correlates and will transition well into the Court of Common Pleas.
Well, again, it's we're losing a judge that has a lot of really good experience and knowledge in property law and zoning and municipal stuff, that we need someone to take that role over. And not only can I kind of fill that to a certain extent, again, no one can just jump in and fill the shoes of a judge that has that type of experience, but it could really assist in decreasing the amount of lag time and catch up that needs to be accomplished, and keep the flow of the courts and the cases through the courts, because of having that knowledge and experience to just assimilate, read the cases, try and get a grasp of what's going on, and keep them moving.
Yeah. So you lived in Monroe County for over a decade. raising your family here, what do you think are the most pressing legal issues facing local families, and how can the court address them efficiently?
Well, I think everybody wants to have, safety and security.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that kind of comes with the law and order aspect of being a judge. And pretty much every judge in the Court of Common Pleas is going to be dealing with, the criminal cases that are coming through there, because unfortunately it's a very large portion of the court caseload. So part of that where I could, address the safety issue is both from the prosecutorial side and the fairness side of things, and trying to properly assess, like if I'm assigned to a criminal docket, the cases that come before me for, the safety issues of the defendants, and also what kind of issues are being addressed, whether or not it's going to be drug cases, how do we help those? Like, I know a big thing that people are trying to press a need for here in Monroe County is, specialty courts, and I'm definitely an advocate of those as well. So we can try and work with hopefully developing some sort of specialty courts, drug court, mental health court, and of course I'm a high advocate for veterans courts, that we can try and get some of those programs off the ground and running, and address again some of the safety and security issues.
Okay. And then how do we know that you're still not Michigan in your mind? Like, what can we know that you're definitely a Monroe County through and through now?
I'm cheering for the Phillies now, and it's difficult, especially with the Detroit Tigers being so good lately, which is very hard.
Okay.
Because they're kind of that
a little bit.
Yeah, they're that team that hasn't had a really good team in such a long time in baseball, and the Lions too. So when it comes to sports, I like to cheer for my hometown teams. Growing up, that's just still
it grows with you forever.
Yep, exactly. It doesn't matter where you move or anything of that nature.
So you're not really convincing that you're
only in regards to sports. No, we live here. We have absolutely no intentions of moving or anything like that. This is where we've chosen to raise our family.
Replanted.
Yes, my wife's entire family is here, and everybody's kind of gravitated towards Stroudsburg and the Poconos, which is great. So now we have, the entire family of hers here, and it's not, any of those situations where we're looking, just to be here to be here. We chose to be here. It's been very good for us as a family, and we can't be. It'd be understated how wonderful our neighborhood is, and the kids that we have in our neighborhood and running around the yard at every given moment. It's it's a lot of fun, and just a lot. It's kind of like craziness, but it's the good type of craziness when
you're probably a man of structure, so it's probably.
We have to find that balance. But watching my kids just screaming with excitement and running around outside and playing with their friends, you can't ask for more.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, and this is your first time running for something, right?
No, I ran for a district attorney a couple of years ago.
Right.
And that was.
This is very different, though.
It's a very different type of race, because one, I actually like it that it's more on the nonpartisan side, where although it on a regular basis you're always asked, what political party are you? So and I'm always honest. I don't hide that fact because I shouldn't have to, and. Also, it's the part where I go, yes, I can be who I want, who I am, but that doesn't affect the way
closed off.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm not closed off, and it's not going to affect the way I apply the law, because the law is going to be applied fairly, unbiasedly,
Yeah,
and impartially. And so that part is actually a little bit on the easier side. Of course, you always get the people, well, you're still who you are. And you just politely say thank you and
Keep it going.
and move on.
Yeah. So with your wife's whole family here, have you had like enormous support from everyone?
Oh yeah, I couldn't do this without them.
Oh, that's sweet.
My father-in-law is my chairman of my political committee,
Oh,
and
that's sweet.
one of our friends is my treasurer, and of course, yeah, everybody in the family has, chipped in, helped out. They run the parade, the St. Patrick's Day parade, all marching alongside, throwing candy and having a lot of fun, and cheering, and there's no way any candidate could do it without that type of support.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for what I have.
That's great. Is there anything you'd like to add for the audience? Like, we could act like this is a voter. What is something you would say to them right now, just to?
The thing I'd say right now, in regards to this race, is that I would definitely be, like, I am who I really seem to be. I don't pretend to be something that I'm not. I'm hopefully that everybody will get that same perception that I'm a genuine type of person.
Right.
I really don't have like political ambition. I don't want to I don't crave the spotlight. I don't crave a title. I don't anything of that nature. I want to do what I can do as part of being a servant for the community. And I believe that this, and I believe that this is one of those big opportunities as a judicial candidate to continue that what I pretty much had my entire career being a servant. And doing some good out there, and again, treating people fairly, administering justice impartially, and just hopefully making a difference.
That's amazing. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's pretty much sums it up.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm Catherine Pabon, your host of Z-Files Podcast. Our guest today, Alex Marek, who is running for Court of Common Pleas in Monroe County for judge. Thank you so much for joining us, and that's it. Bye, guys.
Thank you.